think a lot of people think that culture happens, like a good culture happens on accident. Well, we just found really good people. And you're like, no, that's not how it is.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to this special edition of the LeadHer Lounge with a special guest here. I'm going to do a quick bio before introducing. So our guest in the chair today is a highly experienced people leader, and she's currently the head of people for eLend and the board president for and co-founder of Women with Potential, which is an amazing organization. She leverages a decade of cross-functional experience blending HR, marketing, innovation, and tech to lead culture transformations and drive strategic organizational growth and leadership development, which we're fond of. As a Latina in business, she is deeply committed to fostering equitable spaces where diverse individuals, especially women, are valued, seen, and empowered to reach their full potential. So please give a warm welcome to the show, Kayla Lopez. Yes. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me today.
Absolutely.
Yeah, super excited.
I'm excited too, because you have so much experience and you have really gone through a lot of levels of leadership. And I think you can kind of speak to each one of those. So I think your perspective and everything is going to be really valuable on today's show. So I'm excited to get started.
Thanks. I'm excited.
Yeah. So the first thing that I kind of want to dive into is something that we had talked about. And it was when you were a younger leader, you shared with me that one of the biggest things you learned was to set your ego aside. I would love for you to kind of expand a little bit on that and maybe even share, A, why is that detrimental to effective leadership? And B, what did you learn to kind of help you overcome that part?
Yeah, definitely. I think when you get put in that seat for the first time, at least this was my experience, it's the experience of a lot of women that I've also talked to, just a lot of people actually in general. The people that report to you actually don't care what you think all the time. Like they do, you know, I joke, but at the end of the day, how you say something can come across, you know, if you have 10 different direct reports, it's going to come across 10 different ways. And so there are a lot of moments where you're going to say something or do something and it's not going to hit how you intend it. And you have to be willing to let go of, well, this is what I meant, you know, and actually see it through their eyes of how they're interpreting it and how they're perceiving it. And it's the same with, you know, your leader. Hopefully they're also doing some reflection, ideally. But it really is challenging because you are putting yourself out there with everything you say, because as a leader, you're inviting, you know, your team to learn you, to give you feedback, ideally, and to kind of perceive you in a certain way, how it relates to them and how they do their work. And so if you don't learn how to put your ego aside, it could be bruised a lot, you know, quite a bit. And it has nothing to do with intention. You know, a lot of leaders said, well, I meant the right thing and I want to do the right thing, but it's how it lands and how it comes across. So you learn that at least I did learn that very quickly. And I think a lot of leaders that I've worked with have had to learn that very quickly, because otherwise you just won't survive leadership.
Yeah.
You know?
I think a phrase that we've used before with Monarch has been like, your intent does not equate to the impact.
Yes.
So just because you meant to say something a certain way, or, you know, I didn't mean to hurt your feelings, doesn't mean you didn't hurt someone's feelings, right?
Yes.
And so I love that you brought that up. I want to touch a little bit on, too, another thing you had shared was like being mindful of your own agenda, too, and listening to other people. So that kind of goes hand in hand, I think, with your ego and, you know, I want to accomplish this. I want to do this as a leader. This is my team.
Yes.
So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's so true, because we have sometimes like unintended agendas, too. Like we're trying to do our best, and our perception of our best might be a loaded agenda inherently. And so we have to be like very conscious of that. And, you know, there's a lot of moments when I kind of go through, even today, where I have to remind myself, like, is this what is actually best for the team? Or is this something that I'm excited? Because at the end of the day, like, we also, even though we're leaders, like, we also miss, at least me, I miss doing individual contributor stuff.
I do too.
I
totally get that.
The project work and some of those other tasks, like, you miss it because leadership is a totally different skill set. And so it's hard to not have that come into play when you're trying to prioritize things. You can talk yourself into all types of, you know, justifications. I think the other thing too is, you know, as you're going through leadership, there's a lot of moments where
I don't mean to like cut you off, but I have a perfect example just from myself of someone who had an agenda that I didn't realize that I had when I was a newer team leader in like corporate, and I was a learning and development leader. And I always wanted to focus on the projects that I enjoyed doing, even though I wasn't an individual contributor to those projects anymore. But I loved like animation and voiceovers and all those things. So I would try to prioritize those, even though there were still PowerPoints or other things that we had to accomplish. But because I had fun doing those things, I wanted to prioritize those things. I'm like, you guys will have fun too doing these.
Yes, yeah.
So yeah, I love your point of like, sometimes we don't realize that we're pushing an agenda, allegedly. I mean, that's kind of a heavy word, but
yeah.
But sometimes we do have big things that we want to try and accomplish, and we need to maybe take a step back, listen to the needs of our people, I think, and kind of tailor our approach a little bit better for them.
Yeah, and it's hard for first-time leaders too, because I've seen this play out not only in first-time leaders but even mid-level, and as you kind of ascend, you don't realize the weight that other people put into you, like the level of authority. Even if you don't feel like you're like, I don't know what I'm doing, why should I have any authority? The second that you ascend to now I'm reporting to you, I'm looking to you and to your authority, there's some level of that established. Now, I do like to reiterate, like, you don't need a title to become a leader, but when you are said you're in charge of this team, there's this level of authority. So now your words carry more weight. You're not an equal to the team members anymore. So if you say, no, we're going to do this, they're not taking it as if they have a vote. They're like, well, that's what the leader said. And I think leaders sometimes, the first-time leaders trip up on that sometimes too.
Oh, 100%. I think that there's like this weird mental block in us that's like, oh my God, I have to report to you now, like, you know all of the things, or you have all of the answers, or I can't challenge anything that you say. Which, in that similar vein too, let's talk about those mid-level managers that are playing this tug of war game, really, between like being advocates for their employees, but they're also directly reporting to, a senior leader of some sort. So that's a really challenging role to be in. And how did you, as in that level of like, you were leading a team, you had a senior leader you reported to, but you also had your employees. How did you kind of maintain that tug of war to where you were advocating for both sides, I guess?
Yeah, and you mean like frontline leaders, their direct reports are individual contributors, basically?
Exactly.
To be honest, I will say in my leadership journey, that transition from individual contributor to frontline leader was the most challenging. Like, from frontline leader up, it has its own unique challenges. And then even like mid-level leaders or senior leaders to executive, that has its own challenges. But that dynamic is so challenging because on a Friday, you leave and these people are your peers. On a Monday, they are now your direct reports. Yeah. And you may still want to perceive them as the same, but they're not. Like I was mentioning before, like the authority, the power balance has shifted immediately. And not only that, you're surrounded by folks who may also have interviewed for the same job that you now have. So they're, going through their process, which is normal. They should go through their process of, they had their kind of dreams and what they would have done with the role, and now they have to process that didn't come to fruition right now. Doesn't mean it won't in the future. Right. And in addition to that, there is this whole other skill set that you may have not had a chance to cultivate yet, because as you know, many companies, they will promote leaders before they're ready, but like put them into leadership before they've had any coaching, before they've had any training. And so now you're figuring out this whole different skill set. And I think sometimes people forget, like, when, if you're a graphic designer and then you become a senior graphic designer or a creative director, like, yes, you're building upon that skill set. Leadership's a totally different one. So I think that's the hardest transition, is you're learning a fully different skill set while you're, building the plane while you're flying it. And meanwhile, there are people who, they don't necessarily want you to fail, but they have their own opinions on how it should have been done.
Absolutely.
And as you move in, up through leadership, you don't see that as much all the time. I mean, you might somewhat, but a lot of companies promote or really advocate for promoting from within, especially for frontline leaders. And so it's very common to hire executives from the outside, mid-level senior leaders from the outside, but that frontline leader kind of promotion is pretty strong. And so I think it's really balancing what your new role even means. That's the hardest thing, I think. And then also with this team that previously, you may have confided in them on things that you were frustrated with the organization. Now you're like, oh, I know what I've said about my CEO, but now they also know what I've said, and you're trying to navigate that and figure that out. And that's not to say people shouldn't, vent or talk through their frustrations with their coworkers. Pretty natural thing to do. But there is that kind of, now you're seen in a different light, and it's really 100%. Hard to navigate.
Yeah, I think that's something that it's so common too, because we do. Some of our best friends, Erica is my best friend. I met her at work. She knew all of the things I was complaining about. But at the same time, you do have to be very mindful of what kind of information you're sharing and how you're venting. And I love that phrase of like vent up, not out. Sometimes it's like, yes, you need your people to commiserate with, but that's the thing. Like, maybe actually, let me correct myself. Don't commiserate. That's the thing. If you're going to be venting, be productive, have a solution or something.
Yeah.
If it's possible. But I would love to kind of talk to you about the dynamic between now you have a leader who you kind of have to advocate for, and that chain of communication. It's almost like a game of telephone, right? Like
Absolutely.
What your senior leader is telling you, and now you have to communicate to your employees and make sure that they get it and are bought into it. Like, that's a tough gig to play too. So what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a super tough role to play. So I think for leaders, when they're first getting acclimated to that, one, they're going to have different perspectives they didn't have before. They're going to be in different conversations, be privy to different information that they didn't have previously. And their previous leader, whoever was in that seat before, if anyone, they may have not been good at that also. So there could be things that really they should have known, but their leader wasn't good at moving that down. So I do think, a lot of first-time leaders especially struggle with that. It's really important to get on the same page as your leader as quickly as possible. And sometimes that means asking questions and saying, look, I really want to be clear on this. Maybe you're afraid of sounding like you don't know, or afraid of sounding like you're not up for the challenge, but you can frame it as like, I just really want to be clear on this. I know I'm going to, say it 1,000 times or ask you a bunch of questions, but I just really want to make sure I get this part right. And the biggest thing that I encourage new leaders to do is repeat it back to their leaders. Say, hey, can I repeat this back to you just so you can make sure that I'm understanding this correctly? Here's how I'm going to frame it, for the team members. Yeah. And that's a really good kind of entryway for your leader to give you feedback. To say, actually, maybe let's, take a different way, or here's how a team member might interpret it. Ideally, you have a leader who can coach you through that. That's the ideal. But that also really helps, is that exercise of practicing it with the people that you report to and making sure that you understand it by relaying back to them. I think the other thing is really talking to your peers. I think some people sometimes undervalue like a team lead, of one group talking to a team lead of another that you work closely with, like understanding how they communicate to their team, what they share, what they expect, like all of those things can really help you feel more confident even in communicating to your team members. And again, advocating for the leadership. Like if you know that something's not going to hit with the team members, you can say that. Say, look, here's how I think the team member is going to react based on being a team member myself. Here's how I think they're going to react. How can we overcome this? How can we frame this to where they're understanding the why behind it, or how it's going to positively impact them, if it is? Or let's be honest and say, look, we know this is going to negatively impact you, and here's what we're going to try to do to fix it.
Quick Boss Leaders, this is a leadership development resource brought to you by Monarch Coaching.
You don't need a fancy title or a big team to grow as a leader. That's why Monarch Coaching created the Individual Path, part of our Monarch Leadership Program, designed for professionals who want to lead with purpose, influence, and authenticity no matter their role. Because leadership starts from within, and this path helps you emerge, evolve, and elevate at your own pace. Visit the link in our description below to learn more and use code LHL10 to get 10% off your program package. The Monarch Leadership Program, leadership that begins with you.
All right, let's go back to the conversation.
I love that. I think confirming understanding is such a missed opportunity sometimes of like, and it's okay to say like, I just want to make sure that I'm on the same page. Like that is okay to say. Yeah. But there are moments and where I know that I've been in moments where like, I don't have that relationship with my direct leader, where if they tell me to do something, they're like, no, just do it this way because I told you to do it this way. So, and I know just from experience with talking with younger leaders that they're either intimidated by their direct leader, or maybe they're a micromanager and they don't like that, or whatever the case may be. What kind of advice maybe do you have for someone who doesn't have a good direct relationship with their leader?
Yeah, it's a great question, because you don't need a certificate or a degree to be a leader or to own a business. And there are a lot of leaders that get it wrong. And sometimes, intentionally, like they, for whatever reason, they use that as their power or authority, for bad, not for good.
Yeah.
But then there's some that they stumble, mid-level leaders, executives, they stumble too, as they're going through, and maybe they don't have it all figured out yet. So I think it's a great question. One of the most powerful things that has helped me and some others that I've met throughout my career, and even some that have instructed me to do it, is to go on essentially a learning journey around the organization. Because understanding, the perspective of a leader can be challenging. You're dealing with like the human perception, whether you want to or not. You're dealing with their own like personal stuff that they may have not resolved or healed in their life. Like there's a lot of things going on in all of our brains. But what you can't deny is the facts and data of what's happening in the organization, and a leader becomes much more an authority figure and kind of a force of power when they understand how their business works. So talk to your peers, like I said, talk to other team leads, understand how your team impacts them, look upstream and downstream. If you're, for example, part of a marketing team, ask the people who are constantly coming to you for requests, hey, how can we better serve you? Or like, what are some things that you see in our relationship that could be improved? Or if you're constantly, waiting on technology or waiting on people, like go to them and say, hey, here's the struggles that we have. Is there something we could be doing differently to fix that? Or are we going, using the wrong modes of communication, whatever it is? That helps. And then I think talking to other senior leaders too, that could be dicey, because again, if you're
exactly,
if you're a senior leader, there's some things there. But if you can, and if you have the opportunity, hear what they're saying. Sometimes senior leaders, they're on podcasts. You can listen to what they're saying. When you're a lot of people ignore like when a CEO or COO is like out there, talking to their base, whatever, their clients. They ignore that, but they're telling their clients their commitment to them. And so if you understand like this is what we're committing to for our clients, it makes you a lot stronger of a negotiator when you're trying to lead your team and be like, I understand my senior leader might not be great, but my CEO said this is what we're trying to do here, and kind of molding it that way. So there are ways around it. I think educating and opening yourself up to learning from other leaders in your circle, and even from executives, even if you don't have the ability to have FaceTime with them, like they're saying things. They're out there, they're on the internet, they're in press releases. Consume that data. It's not just all, sales fluff. Sometimes it is, but usually it's not just all like sales and marketing fluff. It's what we're actually promising to our clients.
Yeah, I love that, because you're also making yourself almost more of an obvious choice. Maybe it's not to your exact senior leader, but like to the people around you, you're making yourself like known, and you're having a better presence, and that speaks volumes to the person that's either not responding to you or is like micromanaging you. Like,
yes,
I love that. So you're kind of putting yourself in a more positive light, which is good.
Yeah, definitely. And it really opens up all types of opportunities too. You never know. Like my domain usually is people. And historically, I think myself and other fellow people leaders, when I was, being brought up through HR, like we weren't a partner to the business. They didn't know the business. They knew the people in the business. Yeah. They knew people's names and their departments and their titles, but they didn't understand the business. And HR was not brought into those conversations because they didn't do that. And now they are, because they're learning the business. So
I love it.
Same with any team lead in any department, like learn the business, and that's going to be the fastest way for you to work around your roadblocks.
Yeah.
Whatever that might be.
100%. I think like with the work that you do and the work that what we do with like Monarch Coaching, we're both very passionate about not just like making great leaders, but making really great workplace cultures through effective leadership.
Yeah.
So my last question to you is really like, why do you feel like companies can benefit from investing like in organizations or resources like Women with Potential, or in companies like Monarch Coaching, who we support leaders, we help develop them, we're giving them resources? Why is that beneficial to a company's, or how is that beneficial to a company's culture in the end?
That's a great question. I have a multifaceted answer, but
you are a multifaceted woman.
The first, and I think one of the most important, outside of like the people and the heart of it, which I will get to, it's cost. Like, people is one of the most expensive costs in an organization. Rightfully so, the people make it happen. Yeah. But a lot of leaders, they're like, well, I pay this person, whatever, 60 grand a year. Yeah, but you also offer benefits and you offer them PTO, and all of those things equate to, that could equal $80,000 or $90,000 a year on that single person, and multiply that over 20 people, 30, 300. It's a very expensive, entity there that you're just not investing in, that you're not trying to make better. You try to make your tech better. You push out product releases, you push out all these things to make the tech better, but you don't focus on the people part. And that's a huge part of the experience is, the touch points, and the people are creating those things. They're creating your client journeys. They're creating all of those interactions. So why not invest in the people who are actually making it happen?
Yeah.
I think the other thing that a strong culture really brings is it does breed innovation. Some of the most innovative companies that you'll see, yes, there are some that just have a couple wizards, but that is usually short-lived, because once those wizards leave, it's like, well, the innovation's gone. That company fizzled out. But if you can breed that culture of constant innovation, just imagine, instead of having one or two people who are good at innovation, you now have all of these people who are good at their job, and they also now innovate on top of what they're doing. And it really just is it's so important to invest in that. And I think a lot of people think that culture happens, like a good culture happens on accident. Well, we just found really good people. And you're like, no, that's not how it is. And if you ask a lot of those really good people, they've been through leadership programs. They've read leadership books. They've done, a lot of podcast listening. It doesn't happen on accident. So I do think, instead of waiting for it to bloom, or waiting for it to take root, be intentional. Go out and find companies like yours, or resources for your employees, like Women with Potential. Go out and find those things and bring them in and make it happen faster.
I love it. Invest in your people.
Yeah.
People are number one.
Yeah,
I love that.
That's true.
So tell us a little bit more about Women with Potential with the last bit of time that we have. And if you want to share about the table, anything like that.
Yeah, for sure. So Women with Potential, we are a 501c3 nonprofit. We wanted to take the profit off the table. We really just want to help, other women. And we do help people outside of women too. Our focus and our resource building and our resource libraries are geared towards women, but other folks can also, take part in those resources. I think the biggest thing right now is our coaching platform. So it's that 6 months, you have one-on-one coaching. We used coaches who are trained to International Coaching Federation standards, just to give us some more consistency across the board, and really allow, people to know what they're signing up for. And it is one-on-one, it's bi-weekly. So it's a lot of investment in you. We have found that a lot of organizations, and, the organizations I work for, try not to be one of them, but it's just the case. A lot of organizations either don't have the means, they don't know how, or they just flat out don't care to invest in their people. And so we wanted to put another resource out there for that. We also have the table. So that's an online advice community. So you can go in if you're struggling with something at work and leadership. There's the option to do it anonymously too, if you don't want to, out yourself. If you're kind of just, you want to put it in there. And there's tons of really, smart women, and the community is kind of, self-living. So it's always investing in itself. So it's other women who have been through that, giving advice on how they got through it. So it's a really special organization, and really special group of people that we've managed to cultivate so far. Excited to watch it grow.
Oh, I'm so proud, because I remember you we were sitting and having coffee, and you were telling me about this thing that you're building, and it's incredible. So if you want to learn anything more about Women with Potential, or if you are interested in joining the table, which I encourage you do, we'll have direct links below. You can also find Kayla's Instagram and her LinkedIn there as well. If you got something out of this conversation, which I hope you did, especially if you're a team level leader, you don't have a good relationship with your leader, any of those things we talked about, or just send this to someone who you think would be in the same boat. Again, subscribe if you haven't. Thanks again also to Velocity for this beautiful space, and we'll see you again next week, leaders.